Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Blacklist Exposed. I'm Troy Heinrichs with you here for our live watch party for number 144, Newton Purcell. It was written by Noah Schechter and stars Clark Middleton as Glenn, who are joining me here. You can obviously follow Noah over there at the Blacklist Room, at Blacklist Room on Twitter. They'll be tweeting along, of course, the episode tonight. So follow along on Twitter for all the fun tweets that they put out. And then, of course, you can follow good old Clark Middleton there at Spark Middleton on Twitter as well. Great to have you guys on the show tonight. I know we're in these interesting times, and this is a great way to connect with all the fans and community out there as we stay at home. And it's a favorite show, so if everybody's watching together, why not give them some extra content and talk about what's going on? So why don't we start with you, Noah? You wrote this episode. What are we in for tonight as we kick off here in about 10 minutes or so?
First of all, it's great to be here. And, I feel like before the stay-at-home stuff, I would have found this talking to you and Clark via webcam. I'd be like, okay, I don't know how to do this. What do we, how does this all work? But this is like the third conference call situation that I've had today. So this feels very normal. The episode today is sort of another main story inspired by a lot of the kind of like tech and science stuff that I tend to go to when looking for kind of like unusual Blacklist stories. So we're going to see a version of a mad scientist story tonight with some pretty, I think, unexpected causes that I suspect a bunch of viewers are going to be like, oh, I know exactly this phenomena that we're kind of like exploring today. I don't know how much to give away, so I don't want to give too much. I don't want to give too much.
No, totally agree. And the way this will work tonight, everybody, is that we're actually going to be here hanging out, and we're going to be just chatting along. So when the show is actually airing, you'll see a be right back sign because we don't want to talk over the episode. But when the commercial hits, obviously Clark and Noah, as they can, will come back in and we'll kind of talk about what we just saw, kind of set up the next scene for you, and then we'll hang out about 10 minutes after the show. Joining us here in square number 4 tonight is the other co-host of the Blacklist Exposed.
Hey,
that is Mr. Aaron Peterson.
How's it going, Aaron?
How's it going? I can probably get rid of this.
Aaron was wearing a hat last week, guys, because in Chicago it's still winter. We don't have that nice LA, sunshine.
Yeah, we actually have some sunshine. Great episode, by the way, both of you. That was fantastic.
Well, thanks, man. Glad you like it.
Thank you. It was fun to do.
Host number 3 of the Blacklist Exposed, our backup host, Mr. Rory, is in the house as well.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Rory.
Hey, Rory, how are you?
Not too bad.
Good to see you.
Going the quarantine scruff.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
No reason not to, right?
I just bought an Amazon a pair of clippers. So my new barber is my wife. So since I can't really go to the barber shop, so that's why I'm wearing my hat.
That's probably why Aaron's wearing his as well.
Mangy.
Yeah, that's why I'm wearing my hat too. Don't feel bad.
Yeah, I had it on last week.
Yeah.
So, Clark, Glenn has been an amazing character throughout the course of the series. Good friend of Red's.
Are we live right now, by the way?
We are, absolutely.
Oh, hi.
So tell us a little bit, Clark, about this episode for you. Like, what was it like to film it? What was the interesting things for you? Don't give anything away, obviously, but
no spoilers.
What was what was exciting about this episode for you that we should look forward to?
Well, I can say this from day one, the very first time I ever laid my eyes on the script for Glenn episode, the first episode I did, they called my agents and offered me the part. And I, put my eyes on the page and I thought, this is extraordinary. I mean, I just could tell it's just really going to be a gas to play. I loved the guy right away. So every time I hear I'm going to do a new episode, I'm always very excited. But I think what's really, and each time I do an episode, feels like it offers something new that reveals more about who Glenn is. And this specific episode really made me realize, at least the choice I made as an actor, how far Glenn would go for Red. Because he he really had to latch onto his determination and use an aspect of himself that strengthened his determination and his will to prove to Red how loyal he is to him. And that was exciting for me to play.
And then Noah, you've been with the show now. We were talking to Sam Christopher last week during the watch party.
Yeah.
She likes to brag that she started 3 days before you. Why don't you give us a little bit of your history with the show? How long have you been with the group? And
I have been with the show since 2015, summer 2015, which means that in just a couple months, I feel like a super senior on the blacklist. It's kind of funny to think that this is the longest job I've ever had in my entire life, which is great. I've been working there 5 years. I feel like I know the show. I know the people. I started.
What are you, like 25?
Yeah, I'm 30. I'm 30, but I was
man,
25 when I started on the show.
Listen, Grandpa, 5 years.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I was working at a biotech company in New York.
Oh wow!
And I got the job to come work for John Eisendrath for the executive producer, head writer of the show, along with John Bokenkamp. And I hadn't really done a lot of television before this, so I came in not really knowing all. I'd written one TV pilot, and it was terrible. And so I think John hired me on the strength of a recommendation from his former assistant, who was a writing partner of mine at the time, named Jesse Gordon, great guy. And, I learned very quickly how you write a TV show. And I think, it's one of the things that when people ask, they want to get started as a writer, oftentimes it's like, you got to devote the time to it, because you learn so much when you're doing something 24 hours a day. Or in my case, like 10 to 12. So I learned a lot in that first year and started pitching ideas for the show. And so in my second year as an assistant, John Eisendrath really liked one of the ideas that I pitched. And so that made its way into season 4. So my first episode was season 4. And then I guess it went well enough that they invited me to join the staff. So I've been on staff since season 5. And that's sort of my journey on the show. But Clark, I'm curious. I don't know if we've got time. Clark, how did this role come to you?
Well, it's interesting. And, I share the story often with acting students because I think it's a testament of, the kind of energy you bring into an audition. And by the time, I'd been working a lot of years by the time I went into audition for Blacklist. They called me in to read for a specific part. And I just, I had such a great time in the room. And, I think it's really important to bring a certain energy to the room and know that we're all in this together. And if they're not going to use you, it could be because you're an apple and they're looking for an orange. Mm. But what was most important is that I had a great time and really enjoyed the people. So, and I did not get cast, and that happened 2 or 3 times. And they kept saying, we're looking for something for you. And then I would tune in and look at the show, and I would say, of course, if it were me, I would cast that guy too. Mm. And then finally, one day, my agent called me and said, they've written a part for you, and they want you to do it. And so he sent me the script, and like I said earlier, I put my eyes on it, and I'm going, hey, there's no turning back on this one. Right. It was worth the wait. So that's how it all came about. A little later on, I got an email from John Bokenkamp introducing himself, and we got to be friends, and the rest is history.
Oh, that's great.
Your Twitter handle is @SparkMiddleton?
That's me.
I like that. Spark.
Yeah, I think that's something my wife cooked up because, she's like brilliant at creating little nicknames, and so she had called me for a long time Sparkmeister. So she's so much more tech savvy than me, and her name is Alyssa Middleton, by the way, and just to give her a little plug, she's also a beautiful and brilliant actress. But anyway, when she hooked it up, the Twitter, she's the one that created that handle.
Hey, Noah, I got a question for you.
Shoot.
When you the episode hasn't aired yet, so I'm going to ask this very broad.
Okay.
When you're researching a blacklister and there might be technology involved, do you actually research the technology that's involved, or whatever it is the blacklister is doing? Do you research it quite a bit?
I mean, I try to do my own research before I make a pitch for an episode, because like I'm generally on the show we'll lead into stuff that's like 5 minutes in the future is sort of the phrase that we want to use, right? It might be technology that is being developed somewhere, and we might say, you know what, for the purposes of our show, we exist like just on the cusp, right? The trick and the reason that I try to do a bunch of research up top is we lean away from things that feel too overtly sci-fi, right? Like we're looking for that sweet spot of what could happen in the next couple of years, right? Not 2 decades and a whole revolution away from where we are right now. So generally, like there's always a spot when I pitch a technology or a medical kind of story where John will ask me a question. I'll be like, well, I don't know, because like I did not get an engineering degree, sadly. And so we've got some research guys and we've got a medical professional who we go to. So usually I just like to have enough under my belt that I know the questions to ask the experts, which for me is, a lot of work because I'm not particularly bright. So I try to get as much done up front so that I don't wind up wasting anybody's time, right? That's the big fear for me.
I've got a question. Was this special event that Glenn participates in this particular episode, Noah, was that your idea?
I think that was John Bogenkamp's idea. Like I think because we were looking for a story that at its inception we were like, we want a Glenn story. We want it to not have a lot of red in it, because we thought at the time that we might be cross-boarding some episodes in production, so we didn't think we'd have James available for a lot of shooting, right? So we kind of thought, all right, well, what's a good contained story that can put like Glenn and Red's relationship on the line that won't require a ton of locations or require a ton of time, because we thought that James was going to be busy shooting episode 12 for a lot of the shoot. And once that pressure got taken off, then the story really got built out even further, which I think was kind of great. But the first draft of this that I wrote had almost no Red in the storyline. So you would, there were even more moments, as we'll see. But I think the story does much better for setting up the stakes with, having as much Red in it as we do. I think only heightens the maybe the seriousness. I think without it played a little bit more the fun of the caper. But I think with a heavier dose of Red, it like the story just feels more emotional and complete, I think.
Oh, that's so interesting, because I got an email from John at a certain point, and he said, how do you feel about the thing? Which I'm not going to, the event, the thing I'm not going to mention, because I don't want to give it away to people that haven't seen the show yet. But and I wrote him back. I said, bring it on. I thought it was brilliant. Yeah,
it was always going to be a grueling, I don't want to say too much, but it was going to be a sort of grueling experience for Glenn, and kind of only fun if you were going to be willing to kind of go through it a little bit. So I was glad that you were on board, because I was super happy with how that story came out.
I'm just
All right.
thrilled.
Thank
The,
you.
the fashion sense was amazing, and people will see that soon.
Yeah.
But
They
Yeah.
it's
sure will.
delightful.
I
All
mean,
right.
they're amazing, the wardrobe people and the makeup people. I mean, man, I just love those folks. They really created like a family there, but it all came together, and there's some unusual moments. I don't know if they made it in the cut or not. I'll find out later this evening when I watch it. That came out of me spontaneously that weren't necessarily in the script, and I think it's the way that's written and the condition that everything was set up that fed those instincts, those actor instincts with me, and we just had a great time shooting it. So it surprised me, and I think it surprised everyone else. And I just hope everybody enjoys it. It was a real gas to do.
They're gonna enjoy it.
They will.
Oh,
All right.
they
Well, we
will.
are at the top of the hour, so we are going
Oh,
to
sure.
transition. So this is the part where we're all going to disappear. We're going to go watch the first act, and then once the commercial hits, we'll be on back here. So hang tight, and we'll see you back here in about 15 minutes or so. Thanks, all.
See you soon.
See you soon.
All right, and that's where I gotta
All right, so we are back, and we are on our way to Scranton, Pennsylvania, to see Robert California. Apparently, is this an office plug here, Noah, in the script at this point?
You know, I don't know how much of this I'm allowed to say, but we might as well. We, there was something in the rewriting of the scene. Clark, I don't know if you were seeing these pages, but we were trying to figure out a name that we thought was funny for a place that would like actually fit. And at first, I think we scripted like Philadelphia. You know, it was some clearances issue.
Yes, I saw that change.
And, yeah, and we couldn't like we couldn't figure out. James was bumping on it because like there were too many syllables in Philadelphia, and I agree, like that just didn't quite work. And so finally we like the first.
It's got to be two syllables. Yeah,
it had to be two syllables, and we got to Scranton, and like eventually I was about to pitch it, but I thought it would get struck down because I pitched years ago in a script. I just wrote in as like an alias for Red, Robert California. And I got a script note back from John Eisendrath, which was just capitals no. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to stay away from any potential crossover in the future. But Scranton made it in, which I think is kind of great.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, it's funny about that because when I saw that change, I emailed John about it. And there was a time when I saw a thing about these great Borscht Belt comedians, and one of them was saying how one city's name, Minneapolis or something, isn't funny, but they say Cleveland is.
Yes.
So when you changed it to Scranton, I thought, well, it's either Cleveland or Scranton.
Yeah.
That just works perfectly, you know.
Oh yeah.
Plus, you got to respect a man who can use the word chillax in this day and age. I mean, that's an amazing line.
Brilliant. Was that yours, Noah?
I think that smacks of either. I think that feels like an Eisendrath line to me. Although I will say, like my ability, I used to be able to tell really the difference of like, is that Eisendrath or is that Bokenkamp? But every once in a while they'll surprise me, so I stopped trying to guess. But that was chillax was not me, sadly.
I mean, it's just every episode, there's just more and more of that. And I don't mean to sound pretentious in any way, but that man as an actor, it's just delicious. I mean, you just love it.
Yeah.
And I tell people this all the time, and I absolutely mean it, is the heroes for this shit are the writers. It's you guys, Noah.
Oh, thank
you. We just say the words and you do the heavy lifting. But boy, for me, I'm just really grateful for what you all put on the page.
We appreciate that, and it really, there are parts of the show where things are happening, a mile a minute, and sometimes you just you're solving the writing question of like, this is because I think part of what makes The Blacklist so successful as a show is that we do stories that kind of seem like they should be too complicated to do on like a network show. There's just so many moving pieces. So a lot of times the writing is about efficiency. But then I think part of what makes this show, as I said, so successful is that we balance that with these scenes that are like, you just want to swim around in them for a while. And it's just like, yeah, we're going to spend a couple minutes talking about stuff because it's really fun to hear these characters talk to one another.
All right, well, we're back, and they're on the hunt, so we'll come back here in about 10 minutes for talk about Act 2. So stay tuned here at the Blacklist Exposed Newton Purcell live watch party. Thanks, guys.
Enjoy.
Talk soon.
So who knew that you could actually die from sound? It's crazy.
Die from sound.
Who came
There
up
you
with?
go.
I mean, can I get some of those subwoofers from my office, Noah? Because those look massive.
Those are pretty big. They, so in researching this, you get to learn things like what is the loudest sound that human beings can make artificially? And the answer is we can make some very loud noise. The question of like, do we currently have a weapon that could operate like that? Inconclusive seems to be the answer for the moment. But yeah, that was sort of the idea. I wouldn't. I don't recommend trying to answer the question of can sound kill you.
And probably the number one question for Clark is wearing that tracksuit.
It's a doozy, isn't it?
How hot was it to wear that thing for as long as you had to wear it when you filmed that day?
Oh, well, I'll tell you, it's great that I had it on, and because it was freezing outside at New York City that day. So I had no issue with it. And no, it was really comfortable. It's just, I love it. And like I said about what I said about the script and the excitement I always have in seeing it, when I hear I'm going to be doing an episode, I feel the same way about the wardrobe, because I think, oh man, when I knew I would be in that place doing that thing, which I won't reveal for people that haven't seen it, I thought, I wonder what they're going to come up with in terms of wardrobe for this. And I think there's a thing about, I don't think I'm giving away too much if I say the headband, but because that sort of harkens back to the bowling scene in that particular episode. But
did you draw inspiration there, Noah, to get the headband back in, or was that all New York doing the costume?
That was all Christine, I think. I mean, that's, but I think you're exactly right, Clark. I mean, that level of detail. I'm just rewatching the scene right now. I just think the headband's a masterstroke. I mean, it's just it really brilliant. It pulls the whole thing together, and it's a fun reminder every once in a while. Like one of the pieces of advice that they give young writers, when you, because sometimes you get to set and you want things to be just the way that you imagined it. But one piece of advice that they give is like, remember that everyone else who's working on this show is the best, is like among the best in the business, right? So like everyone from the grips to the gaffers to the costume designers to the makeup artists, they're not doing it because they're okay at their jobs, right? Like a lot of people want that job, and generally you got to be really, really good to do it. So I think that's a kind of a humility that you got to take in, and then the appreciation is then you see these incredible artists pull off like amazing stuff, both things that scream out to be noticed, and then the things that don't scream out to be noticed. Like I was watching and admiring the kind of like tinted glasses that Red has been wearing, these sunglasses that he's been wearing recently, and I just think like that is so great. Like it's so stylish, but also appropriate for his age. I don't know. It says something to me about they're kind of warm colored. Maybe that says a little bit about how he sees the world. I don't know. I think that kind of gold is all over this show.
Well, it's interesting what Noah's saying, and I completely agree. One of the things about it is that's the relationship between everyone that come together to get this to the screen. And that wardrobe stroke, it did work for me, because I thought there's an unconscious need for Glenn, I think, at times to get attention. And I'd been thinking as an actor, about making certain choices that reflected that. And when that piece of wardrobe came on, I was like, well, that's it right there. Only Glenn would pick that color.
Yeah, that's not an outfit you choose because you're trying to hide, which I think is kind of great when you're on this clandestine mission
Yeah.
You shouldn't, a professional wouldn't want to draw attention to himself, but it's glad he's got it. Like that's part of
Exactly. That's that inner contradiction that's just so fun to play. And the more of those little things you find as an actor, just gives you that opportunity to flesh out more of the humanity. And you know, as an actor, I just love the guy, love playing the guy.
All right, well, we're back, and we'll be back here again in about 5-10 minutes. So stay tuned, everybody. We're here with Newton Purcell watch party for the Blacklist Exposed. See you in a bit.
See you in a minute.
See you soon.
feel like I want to be with you.
So they really want to take a look at this episode here because everybody's going, huh? Did she have something to do with it? Was there foul play, Noah, with the death of the husband?
That was the first thought that went through my mind.
Keep watching. So there's a lot of cell phone use in this episode, Clark. So from an actor's perspective, how do you guys do the cell phone? Do you talk yourself, or are you actually talking to the person on the other end when you guys do a cell phone scene?
Pardon me. Well, by the way, just as a sidebar here, because I see myself, I catch myself because of this beard touching it. And, I've been safe at home for several weeks, but if you've seen me do that, please don't follow suit out there with this virus. Don't touch your face if you can. But yes, the cell phone. Well, I love as an actor playing any scene on a telephone, but sometimes if there is dialogue, like if Red has dialogue, a back and forth thing, then somebody will read it right off the set, read Red's lines. So I will sit there and respond in the phone.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And so in this particular segment, then Noah, we had the scene at the hospital, and we have this conflict between Aram and Elodie as far as how their relationship is going to go.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's been wondering, a lot of the fans are saying, why this relationship? When is this relationship going to end?
Mm-hmm.
Why did we decide at this point to really move this relationship into high gear in this episode in particular?
Well, I think I don't want to say too much because I would say hold on, because as I think probably the close viewers can notice, things are ramping up in this relationship. I would say that, I think part of this story is about those relationships that we run into, particularly maybe after something painful has happened in a romantic relationship where, I'll leave it to viewers, and I'd love to hear what Amir thinks about why Aram fell into this relationship so quickly. I know, like, for myself, he found something very exciting, right? I think there is something a little escapist in the drama of that relationship. I think we were trying to hit that pretty clearly with the, you go skydiving, I think this whole relationship sort of feels a little bit like boundary pushing. And I think a lot of us have been in relationships where it's like, maybe on some level he knows it's not good. Maybe, I don't think he's thinking right now. This whole episode is trying to put that question on the front burner, right? Like, does he want kids, or does he want someone that he's, jumping out of an airplane with? And I think in that last scene we just saw, he is trying to say, I am in, baby. Like, I am really here for you. I want to follow my heart and follow my feelings. I think, as a lot of our fans have already noticed, and as I think a lot of us know from our lives, sometimes following our hearts and our feelings isn't the best idea. So we'll see where that will go with him. But I think we were trying to tell a true emotional story, maybe about a rebound relationship, or maybe something more.
Well, I think fans are in for a treat because we're finally going to get to see what's really up with Glenn at this dealership in the Touch a Truck contest. So hold on to your hats. We'll be back to talk about this with Clark Middleton in just a bit. Stay tuned.
See you in a minute.
And I think we're going to ask a question of why would you touch $12 million with Cheeto fingers, Clark?
Well, that was my idea, by the way. And they generally ask me, "What do you think Glenn would be eating?" And they have a lot of options. And somehow I mentioned, I think Cheetos was there, and I said, "Well, Glenn's definitely going to eat Cheetos," and because Clark loves Cheetos. But also, I knew very well what Cheetos do when you eat. And I thought, well, that's just another way of me sort of reflecting in the behavior, Glenn's behavior, that he's getting a little tired. He's a little unconscious that he's putting yellow fingers on that object, which I still won't say what it is, because I know there are many people in the country out there right now that haven't seen the episode yet. It hasn't aired on the West Coast yet.
Why
I'm
don't you
waiting for some orange handprints.
exactly?
Yeah.
So now, how much of the scene between Noah, you writing it, and then Clark, you acting it? How much of the cutaways and the shots and the facial expressions and the pointing at the Reverend and all of that was more on the New York side from the acting versus how much of it was written in the script?
Well, as I remember the script, it was written. I think Noah, remind me if I'm wrong, but I remember it being written as a montage. And but in terms of what I did, we just played. They put the camera on, and I just did whatever hit me in the moment. And we kind of created a mixed salad of the different looks and responses. And he's written in what's going on between the preacher and the other guy, and I can't remember what the Korean killer. So that was written in. So I thought, well, he's trying to. It's like a chess match,
Right.
He's really trying to be or poker. He's trying to intimidate them. So that's what we cooked up in the moment, spontaneously.
Yeah, I think a lot of the gestural work has to come on the set, because I think usually when we write a montage, there'll be very specific beats that we need to hold, and I think folks who've been watching the show for a long time will notice there's certain times in this story where we lean on montage, and I think oftentimes those are in heightened emotional moments, right, where suddenly somehow the emotion of the story, the mood of the moment might be more important than any specific action line or bit of dialogue. So and sometimes not, but I do think this is one of those moments, and when you're just like, okay, we got to convey this feeling. I think generally that's a good time to let your actors and your directors really go to work and trust that your great actors will come up with something kind of incredible, a variation on the idea that you need, and that the director will have the camera in the right spot and catch that moment. That's certainly one of the most satisfying things that you can have happen is, there's the satisfaction of a writer seeing the moment and being like, that is exactly what I wanted. They nailed it. Amazing. And then there's the second part, which is oh my God, I didn't have that particular bit in my head, but they found, what it was that I liked about it in a way that I couldn't even have described necessarily.
Well, the chase is on, and we are going to see if we can catch our killer here in this next act. So stay tuned. We'll be back here with the Newton Purcell live watch party from the Blacklist Exposed, and hang tight. We'll be right back.
See you in a bit.
Enjoy.
I believe.
So we got a bunch of stuff happening in this particular act, Noah.
Yeah.
And it's amazing when you think about how you talk about the signposts that we need to hit along the way in order to set up future episodes. Here we have this one with Park. We got the tease way back when we introduced her character about Anchorage. Here and then we have the huge fight with Frankie. Now we have this almost strangling of Newton. Is this something that we're setting up for a future storyline with Park?
I would say yes. I
Shake
think
my magic 8-ball.
if I had to guess based on the scripts that I read, Park is our new character this season, and I think like our characters have sort of noticed throughout, and as we discussed with kind of the Anchorage bit, there's more to Agent Park than might meet the eye. And this was a great moment to work through, in part because I always like a good fight scene, but also just to play around with, I think in this episode, as we heard in some of Newton's speech just then, the degree, and I think the show does this pretty well throughout, the degree to which our blacklisters are just villains is never quite as simple as it might be on like a kind of procedural cop show, right? And I think that speaks also to what we're looking for in a good blacklister is, like, as John Eisendrath will point out fairly regularly, like most people will not commit murder, right? Like most people won't, even for good reason, kill somebody, right? So always we have to ask ourselves, what would really make someone unhinge in such a way to do something this horrible? And so I think generally we look at our blacklisters as being in some ways victims. And so it was fun in this act to like hear his backstory, and then in this moment of kind of his peak evil, to see him going from perpetrator to potential victim so quickly. That I thought was a really cool moment, and not something that we dig into all that often.
I'm more concerned about what did he actually test the apparatus on before he decided to kill his first human, because obviously he had to tweak that box somehow. that makes me more.
The number of watermelons that lost their lives in the building of that box.
The turtles, save the turtles.
I'm going to go out and get those Bose noise canceling headphones now, just to be safe.
Yeah,
good idea.
Because this is too real. Something like this could actually really happen.
Well, I mean, I think one of the reasons that John Bokenkamp was so excited about this is that he, I hope he wouldn't mind me saying this, like, I think for a while he was being troubled by some tinnitus, which is persistent ringing in the ears. And that was, I read an article about sort of the noise a long time ago, about like the noise of the modern world, right? If you think about it, we are making more sound than ever. I mean, to an unfathomable degree. Like,
very true.
Stuck with me about birds. Their voices are getting. This was a line that ultimately got cut from the episode, but like, bird call has changed because they're having to shout their calls, their songs over modern life, right? And so their voices have actually become more shrill. And so I was interested in the way that modernity is playing out, like, in our ears.
I did a movie called Noise once.
Yep.
About an anarchist played by Tim Robbins. I'm sorry, that was blowing up places that he feels are causing too much noise. And having lived in New York City many years, I know how challenging that can be. It can really put you on edge.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Big time. And it's documented. I mean, it's not like you look at how kids, you don't learn as well in noisy environments. It'll affect your cortisol levels, your blood pressure. It's one of those things that the societal problems that's kind of like, you're a fish and you're in the water and you're like, I didn't know water was wet because I lived here my whole life. But I think we're not particularly well designed as a species to notice the effects of things that we take to be normal, like the amount of sound that surrounds us at all times.
True that.
Sorry, I
Mike's
feel like
muted.
a downer. I'm just like, we're all going to be
No,
screwed.
no.
Because, our heads are going to explode because we live near highways. But
Yeah, no, totally fine.
yeah.
Yeah, but I think we got to figure out what sounds are coming from the bathroom next, right in this next scene. So we'll be back in just a minute as we hear Red see what's going to go on with this truck and how Clark's going to wiggle his way out of it. So stay tuned. We'll be back in just a minute.
Hang in there, folks.
And we're coming back. I don't suppose you got to actually drive the car, did you, Clark?
Well, I trust me. I seriously wanted to. The truck I did, but the car, no. They had a stuntman do it, and it was just I mean, I didn't have to work very hard at that. I mean, when that thing rolled up, I mean, it just that's a Clark Middleton response. Just seeing it, it's a beautiful thing, isn't it? I just want to give a quick shout out to some of my favorite blacklisters, Lindsay and Amber, my brother Kirby, and the best doc in the state of Texas, Steve Trammell. So anyway, they're watching, and I just am greatly appreciative of all the blacklisters and blacklist fans out there.
I think we appreciate Glenn the most in this episode, because this episode, I laughed out loud even watching it the second time just now. I'm just like, it's like, I'll take care of you, R squared.
The license plate was I deserve.
Yeah, isn't that funny? I mean, the license plates.
It's just the little things you pick up like that. Like Red makes sure to put the I deserve on his license plate.
Was that you, Noah?
I think that came in after I finished my draft, because I remember seeing that and being surprised and like laughing when I saw the daily. So that was not me in the script. I wonder. I don't even know if it probably made it into a script, but I didn't. I missed that in the script or something, because I laughed when I saw the dailies. I thought it was great.
Oh,
I like the fact that you used Eye of the Tiger in 2 different versions.
Well, finding the second version, I'm blanking on the name of the artist right now, because everyone should look her up. That version was great. I saw the first cut that came out had the regular Eye of the Tiger track in that moment, and it was like all wrong. It was just, like the first time it was great, but I'm watching the second time and I'm like, there are like really emotional performances going on here, and it's got to cover a lot of our storylines, and it's just like, that's not working. But then we found this John Bissell, who does the music. He's the music supervisor on the show. Is really great, and
I can't wait to hear that. To see it tonight.
Good. It's really good.
Yeah,
John emailed me last night. Said, you're gonna love the score. He said you're gonna love the music. So I'm excited.
Yeah, we really nailed it. That song I thought was so wonderful.
And it's a bonus track actually from Jen Grant. It's on her album, The Beautiful Wild. I believe it was 2012, and it's actually the 12th track on the album. The track is actually called Green Grows the Lilac, and it starts out with a rendition of Green Grows the Lilac before it kind of pauses, and then you get that kind of secret hidden bonus track for that remake of Eye of the Tiger. Just a real great find for Bissell.
It's amazing because, like Noah was saying, a show like Blacklist, one of the reasons it's so good and so successful is everybody is at the top of their game in each department. And the music, again, is just a reflection of that. The people that do the music. I mean, it's just, there's not a missing link in this show in terms of the cast and the crew and the directors and producers and the writers. It's just, Philly's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I was really happy with how those final moments kind of turned out in an episode. And that's really, like, for me, that's sort of the payoff, right? I want at least that sort of emotional summing up at the end of an episode. Like, my favorite episodes usually have something that really speaks to us emotionally. And then you want to set up whatever's coming next, as we saw that scene with Liz too, where that's going. I thought I really enjoyed the music and strong end of the episode, I thought.
Although hard to find a guy who looks 30 years older than what he is in his picture. His private eye though seems really like she's got she's a real deal. She's kind of hardcore.
Essie Jackson's no joke. Yeah, I'll be curious to see the kind of, I think, with like we do with Park. There's we introduce characters with some idea of where they might head, but you also, I think, as with Clark coming on to play Glenn, sometimes you hit something and you think, well, okay, this, what could have been like a small arc might be like, oh no, like we want to add this person to just become part of the fabric of the show in a way that is sort of surprising. And I think we're waiting to see what S.C. Jackson's future is gonna be with in the story of the Blacklist moving forward.
Very similar to how we introduced Frankie at the start of the season.
Right.
Yeah, it's the same thing. If you look at Aram's character, he wasn't supposed to be a full-time character on the show, and look where he's gone. He was only supposed to be in the one episode, the second episode of the year. So it's amazing where you can take a character, see how he goes, and develop him to where Aram is now. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of my favorite things about doing television. And again, for me, as an actor, it goes back to the writing. And I often feel like, you know, when you have a part on a show and you may be a guest star for just 1 or 2 episodes, when it's really well written, it's almost as if the character sort of asking for the writers to tell his story or her story. And Glenn had that. Again, it's the writing. And the writers may not intend that necessarily, but, you know, I think what you see on the page and, you know, because there's a lot of things I see and that I do sometimes. And I think this is a one-hit thing, you know, I'm just going to do it one time. And, you know, but sometimes as an actor, you go, wow, there's a lot more of this guy that I'm curious about too. And so I think there's a kind of a symbiotic relationship between the writers and the actors in that way, because they inform me and hopefully some of the things I do informs them when they write another episode.
I thought this was a great message too, Noah, for especially what we're dealing with now with the whole stay-at-home orders and what's going on in the world, but just that whole dialogue from Newton and the heartfeltness that he's like, you know, we can't hear the birds anymore and we can't hear the waves crashing and God's music is gone. And then you hear stories about how LA has got the cleanest air possible and just the amount of things that we're doing as humans to the planet. I know Megan's a big, you know, advocate of the planet and stuff. And so just getting an episode like this, I think just calls the question, like, what are some things we can change too? And that's always great when a television episode makes you think beyond just what's on the screen for the entertainment.
It is.
I mean, go ahead, Clark.
No, I was just saying, I mean, we're all in this together and it really is. It's really prescient and meaningful. And I think important to have stuff like this right now. We really need it. And, you know, it's eye of the tiger, baby, you know. Keep us going. We'll get to that eye of the tiger, baby. That'll get us through it.
Oh, I'm still laughing about that. The tracksuit, the headband. Oh, my God.
Oh man, when I saw that script, I thought, oh no, they didn't. But I'm just so happy that it was all right there on the page. Just lovely, fun stuff to do.
Well, I know we're coming up on time here for this portion. Obviously, the podcast will be out in just a little bit for those that are following along. That's The Blacklist Exposed, if you want to search for that in your podcast player. Noah, Clark, what from this episode hit the cutting room floor? What didn't make it in that you guys were hoping would make it in?
Oh, man, that's good. Let me think.
Well, I don't know because, you know, I haven't seen it yet. There is one little bit that I did that I'm guessing didn't make the episode because nobody has brought it up. And, you know, I know the crew just lost it, you know, and said, oh, let's do that again to make sure we get that. And it was just a spontaneous moment. But I really understand why things are cut because it takes a lot to squeeze things into that. What is it, Noah? About a 47-minute structure?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, if it was up to us, it'd be 60.
Yeah. Sometimes it feels like it's like you start with the script. I know a lot of the writers on the staff have this have this feeling of like you get through the draft and it's, the draft is 58 pages long and you're just like, oh no, this I'm screwed. And I think every once in a while though you look at I think generally then we all work together to be like, okay, we don't want to send this to John and John until it's, closer to 53 pages. And sometimes in cutting things down, you learn something, right? You learn what's really important. You figure out what you have to get. And I'm afraid it's made me sort of impatient as a television viewer, right? Because some of these shows are like, they just make up how long they want it to be. It's like, this episode will be 56 minutes and this episode will be an hour and 10 minutes. I'm like, that's great. But then sometimes I'm watching those shows and I'm like, nothing happened in that scene. Like just really nothing. And I get it. Maybe it was like a cool shot or it was like a nice bit of, I don't know, like a cool location or like something beautiful, something that established that.
If it doesn't move the story along, it's got to go.
You told me you told me what the character thought. Like I just saw, they told me in the performance and you just spent all this time. So sometimes I got to check myself because I get a little impatient now. I'm used to the Blacklist pace of like, bop, 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 bop.
It's hard to go back to watch something like Walking Dead and it's like, they're walking and walking and walking.
Tempo,
there's no dialogue, right?
Hey, it's right there in the title. If you didn't know that, going
the
into
writing
it.
too, the dialogue, it just pops. You can't sit back on it. It's not introspective for Glenn. I mean, he's so spontaneous, and when I just jump into the rhythm of it, it opens up my instincts, and which again is a testament of really great writing. It's just for people that aren't aware. In relation to what we're talking about right now, generally we figure screenplays and scripts for television are generally about a minute a page. So when Noah says 59 or 53 pages, that's obviously going to be over the 47-minute limit that they have to squeeze in. So
yeah.
I also thought, like Noah, I mean, I don't mean to go too off the road, but could you also explain for people that may not know what a montage is? I thought earlier that I got a text from somebody saying, what is a montage? So maybe you could explain that.
Sure. So, I mean, a montage generally is when you're stacking scenes together in rapid succession, cutting between moments that are not sort of physically connected or the stories aren't connected to convey a ton of information at once. It is a kind of way to speed through certain moments in the story. It's also just in the script a way, and I think it's also, maybe whoever asked that question would be curious that when we're writing scripts, we're really just writing a document that's trying to communicate to the actors, the directors, the set designers, locations managers. This is a blueprint for making a television show. Like very few people who watch The Blacklist want to read a Blacklist script because it's just a blueprint. It's like looking at, you want to live in your house. You don't want to see the plumbing, right? So montage is also a technical term where we're telling the directors and the producers like, okay, so we need to just pick up a bunch of quick shots here that strung together will tell some story. So, we use montage kind of as a designation to say like these are a bunch of quick moments that are going to kind of be strung together, and so sometimes it's another way of also saying it's not a full scene. Like you're not going to have each moment having necessarily a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's just a quick. We also sort of will say like a bunch of quick pops of this, then this, then this, then this, then this, to often convey a mood or to show the passage of time. So generally it's a way of like, if you have a character who's like, going to do a 6-month transformation and you need that to happen in a minute and a half, tops, probably 30 seconds, you do a montage, you catch them at different moments to compress time or expand time.
Or make the scene more interesting. We see it a lot used when either Red is explaining to Liz about a Blacklister and then you kind of see the pops of information because it's just the two of them sitting on a bench, not so entertaining. But when you throw in now he's going to cook the box and he's going to do this and he's going to do that, it really gets your emotions amped up for that character.
Totally. It's interesting, Troy, you mentioned that, because that is like when we use the term quick pop, often when we're breaking the episode, we're trying to figure out when Red's talking, what are we going to cut to, right? And so I think of that almost a little differently, although I think you're right technically that it does sort of become, it's kind of intercut rather than a montage. But I think a lot of what people think of when they think of a montage is also a music-driven montage. So it's important in the end of an episode too to figure out, like I think we did very successfully with that Eye of the Tiger cover, is like, what is the overall mood? What's the piece of music that is going to cover these all of these pops of scenes? So when you one cue that you're about to start a montage is if you get a needle drop and a song is about to start, you might be thinking, okay, here comes the montage, and let me see if I can get the sense of where the character is heading emotionally or what's going on in the story.
Yeah.
It fills in those blanks, because everybody always says, I like to call it off-screenville, because people are like, what, I didn't see that. How did this happen? When did they talk about this? I'm like, it happened off-screenville. You don't need to see everything. And that's what it is. Like, the montage allows you to tell a little story within the story without taking up chunks of time that you don't have.
And we do use it certainly in that way. Like, you want to know, well, what's going on with the, that is actually one moment that I don't, you guys might know, my feed cut out just at the end. Did we get a pop of Newton sitting in prison at the end of the episode?
No.
Not in prison, no.
No.
So one of the, and I think this is a bit of a spoiler, but one of the moments that we really liked that just didn't make it into that cut because for time was, you see our blacklister caught in prison, suddenly subject without his devices to the sounds of the world, and you see that kind of yellow, I forget the name of the gas, but one of the gas lights kind of flicker on that emits one of those buzzes, and you hear him start to suffer from that. So that was the moment, just going back to your question, that did wind up on the cutting room floor that I thought was really good.
Yeah, I love this one too, because it still leaves you thinking. There's like two big questions that come out of this, and that's one of, we never saw what happened with the Reverend. So did Glenn actually succeed or not? Right.
Yeah.
And then there's and then Aaron and I are having a disagreement about this right now on the podcast, is that, did Elodie kill her husband or not for the $10 million? And what does Aram do now that he knows about the $10 million? Because he was lied to by Elodie from the top of the episode from the airplane jump.
Yep.
I just got a funny tweet from a fan, and he asked me, said, how does Glenn stay healthy with his diet, with the food he eats? The meatball heroes, the teriyaki bowl, the Cheetos,
It wasn't even a
bars.
meatball hero. It was a meatball on a fork, a plastic fork.
Yeah.
It
was fun to do.
The one thing I would point out is that Glenn did have a heart attack. It was medically induced, but he did have.
It was a great acting job, and I mean, it was on Glenn's part. Clark Middleton not so good, but for Glenn Carter, it was a really good acting job. I told the director, I remember saying when I was doing it, I said, "Don't be shy about reeling me in if I go too far," and he said, "No, you can keep going further." And I said, "All right, you're giving me a lot of rope. Don't let me hang myself. Let
her rip.
Let her rip." That was really fun to do.
But the big cliffhanger at the end, right? No, it's the setting up for the roadmap. Here we're going to look for Ilya. We get a shot of the box, a shot of the scar. So people are reminded, of course, that the scar and the box insignia at the top are the same. And for those that may not remember, again, Red knew the Major. And the Major is the one that put Tom and Gina Xenotakos into place, both with that insignia. So what does that all mean? Is the Major still a part of this, even though he's not around anymore? And is this Red's insignia for whatever he is or who he is? And so many questions yet left in season 7. It's going to be a great ride.
Absolutely.
It's only been from season 1, that we've been waiting for that.
The best answers always start at the beginning, and then they always close up at the end just perfectly. We'll have to wait and see. Well, thanks so much.
Very true.
Clark for being here, Noah for being here.
My pleasure.
Great to be able to do this for the fans and just give a little bit of hope and peace in this time, and rally around the thing we love the most, right? Is the Blacklist. And we'll be back hopefully next week doing this again, and Until then, this is Troy from the Blacklist Exposed saying make sure you go ahead and follow at Blacklist Room and at the Blacklist GSM over there on Twitter. Of course, the podcast is available in all the fine podcast places, and the blacklistexposed.com is the episode. Thanks again to Clark. You can follow him on Twitter at Spark Middleton, and of course Noah over there at Blacklist Room. I always say the Blacklist Room because it's so like comes right off the tongue. At Blacklist Room, and of course at NBC Blacklist for giving us a home to actually air the show. So thanks so much to all the people over there at NBC, over at Sony, and of course John Bokenkamp and John Eisendrath for helping you guys stay sane in this crazy time.
Thank you.
You guys are all great, and thank you to all you amazing Blacklist fans. I mean, it's a great community. We love you all.
Thanks for watching, everybody. This was really fun.
You bet. All
Sure
right, thanks
was.
guys.
Awesome.
All
Thanks,
right.
guys.
Have a good night. Take care.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
And again, that's the blacklistexposed.com. Podcast will be up if it's not already in your feed. Go ahead, listen to Aaron and I, and we will go ahead and see you next week. So from all of us, make sure you keep yourself off the blacklist. Take care. We'll see you later. Have a good one.